Next conversation today is with Aurora Mayor Mike Coffman. Mayor Coffman, welcome back. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So you said recently that there are areas of Aurora that have been overtaken, your words, by violent criminals. You said that those areas must be taken back street by street, block by block. When you say overtaken, does that mean that gangs or other criminals are effectively like in control of parts of your city?
Well, I think, let me break it up into two parts. I think the first part is that we are aware that there are Venezuelan gang elements, fairly significant ones. I think TDA is the acronym for the gang, and so we've been alerted to that fact by our federal law enforcement partners, and so we are working with our state and federal law enforcement partners actively to try and root them out. It's challenging because they tend to prey on their own. In other words, these are Venezuelan gang members within the Venezuelan community, which is new to our area, and there's a fear factor in terms of trying to get the cooperation among these Venezuelan migrants to report, that they're being victimized.
So help me understand, though. You'll hear Aurora police say there's some influence of Tren de Aragua in town. There's some influence of these gang members.
Yeah.
You were talking about areas that have been overtaken. Are you talking about two different things there?
Yeah. So let me talk about overtaking, because I think what this does is it's another layer on top of a problem that we already had. So, for example, the area of Colfax and Havana. That I've been focused on, that is, in my definition, is out of control. And
you're referring to a mass gathering that happened there the night that the election results came down.
Now that is on Havana.
Yeah,
that was on Havana. I think that people are kind of conflating the two in terms of Venezuelan gangs or violent behavior. And I think you have to separate those. And I think what I said in one interview was, I'm not worried about the people that were there. I'm worried about the people that were not there. And the people that are not there, that are Venezuelan, for example, would be people maybe that they have no civic interest. These are people that are there because they've been pushed out of their country either for economic reasons or for political reasons, because they're part of the opposition, or they're in fact economic victims of really a corrupt dictatorial government. And so what you had that night, and I understand the anger for it, but really what you had at the end of the day was they did a meetup, and 3,000 to 4,000 people crammed into an area in anticipation of the election results from Venezuela that they were hoping would overturn that dictatorship. And so, there was a lot of unbridled enthusiasm. Obviously, we wish it would have been expressed differently. But it can't be conflated. The two have to be seen separately.
Yeah, some of your fellow conservatives on Aurora City Council have suggested that there was some gang influence or organization or something around that mass gathering on the Venezuelan election night. You've seen no evidence of that.
I've seen no evidence of that.
Okay. I want to go back, though, to what you said about areas of the city being overtaken by violent criminals. Are you talking about Tren de Aragua? Are you talking about TDA when you talk about parts of the city being overtaken?
I think there are pockets that we're concerned about within the Venezuelan community in our city that are questionable. And but the 15th or 16th and Nome, the apartment building on that corner, in my view, is not one of them. And I think there are people that are trying to say, and the owner, I think, is trying to say that it was overtaken by gang activity. But that building has been a problem for years. And I can remember, and so they reached out to me and said, we understand you're understaffed and this and that in your police department, but our building has been overrun by gangs. And so I went to talked to the city attorney, and I said, because I knew that we were taking them to court over a bunch of other things. And so they said, no, it's best not for you to communicate with them. And I agree. In looking at the situation so far, it appears to be, it doesn't appear to be a building taken over by violent gangs. It's a long-term pattern of neglect.
Let me ask you, if gangs have not taken over that building, why do you think the property manager is working so hard to convince the public and your colleagues on city council that that is what happened there?
You know, I'm not. Well, I think the owner. That's the narrative that the owner wants to put. Is it because of the fact that he's getting we're taking him to court on other issues, and his to say that it was beyond my control because of these gang issues. But in interviewing the people coming out of the building that are unfortunately being evicted from the building, they're not citing that concern. I'm not to say that there are other buildings in the city that we're watching, that we're looking at, that we're concerned about, but quite frankly, that's not one of them.
When you use the imagery like taking it back street by street, block by block, I think for a lot of people, myself included, that kind of conjures up like a military imagery. Right. You served in Iraq, obviously, where operations like that had to be done. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about, or am I reading something into that you didn't mean?
Well, I think we're working with our law enforcement partners. So first of all, it's a very difficult situation because the fact that we have a gang that is very concerning, that we understand by our federal law enforcement partners is in our city, and they are within the Venezuelan community, and our law enforcement, local law enforcement, and our state and federal partners are trying to catch them in the act of doing something, and we need the cooperation of the members of that community to be able to do so. And I think we certainly are trying to assure those members. We are not immigration authorities. That's a federal responsibility. But we need their cooperation. We need their help in order to identify the people that shouldn't be in this country at all. And not to get into an immigration debate, and we can certainly discuss that in the border, but we have a situation where we've had a large influx of Venezuelans. So over a relatively short period of time, the Venezuelan government does not cooperate with the U.S. government in terms of sharing criminal histories, which other countries do. And they don't accept people that are deported, Venezuelans, to come back to the country. So it is a very difficult, and there's not an adequate vetting process at the border, and some people cross illegally anyway without going through that vetting process. So it is a challenging situation. I would say that taking back some pockets of the city really goes beyond the Venezuelan question. That we have unfortunately had a long-term pattern of criminal history that we've lost, unfortunately, parts of the Colfax corridor. And
when you say lost, what does that mean? Are there no-go zones for Aurora PD?
No, they're not no-go zones for Aurora PD. I mean, one cop isn't going to ever go into a situation like that alone. They're always going to have backup, and and there's an assessment as to how significant that backup is. But Saturday night I was at some of the business owners said, you always come here with APD, and people see the police with you and they scatter. We want you to come with us in the evening, at night, and without APD, and we'll walk with you, and we want to show you how bad things are. And it's pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. The APD rolls up in a patrol vehicle and they scatter, and the APD leaves and they come back, and it's an open air drug market. It's prostitution. It's homelessness, with all the unfortunately the effects of that from in terms of shoplifting and theft. And I was really disheartened, and I had a meeting, I think it was a week or so ago, up there with business owners, and a lot of them were just small business, Hispanic immigrant business owners on Iola Street and by Colfax and Havana, and to tell me their struggles, and I think, and I'm obviously going to have this conversation with APD, that I think the only way to win back that area is you've got to have foot patrols. You can't have, people, driving through in a patrol vehicle and maybe getting out for a minute and then getting back in the patrol vehicle. There has to be a concerted effort on foot. Now we have a challenge that we are understaffed in the Aurora Police Department, and but we are closing that gap, and so I want to see when we can dedicate more resources to that area. I think that Colfax between Peoria and Yosemite can be revitalized. It has to be made safe. I mean, it looks, the same buildings were there when I was a kid growing up. Retail, it was the central business district for the city. That has moved out, but the same buildings are there, either vacant or marginally used. And so we have to have a different strategy. I think that strategy is we need residential on the street, multifamily residential with eyes on the street. I believe the area can be made safe.
Can I ask you a question? Can Aurora Police do what you think needs to be done in terms of the foot patrols in those troubled areas, in terms of the intensive work against the gangs? Can they do all of that while abiding by the terms of the consent decree? Or do you feel like their hands are in any way unfairly tied by that agreement?
Not by the consent decree. I mean, our legislature hasn't been too helpful sometimes, and in doing some laws that I think are more sensitive to the rights of criminals and the victims, and I think that they're striking a better balance now. I think that they have in the past, so resources is a part of it. In terms of the gang issues, the gang issue, I'm saying that there's the one gang that is very concerning, and that we are clearly dedicating the resources to that. I've talked with the governor about that. The governor's, well aware and fully committed. In fact, it's the governor that really, I think, brought us together with our federal partners in a team, and so we now have a working group with every echelon of law enforcement focused on the one issue, and that one issue is this one very serious gang.
Hey, so Aurora Police have this new task force, right, looking at Tren de Aragua to determine how many TDA gang members are in Aurora, what they're doing, that kind of thing. And just today, City Council was briefed by APD and told that some of the claims being circulated about the gang in Aurora are probably not true. Is there a danger that some of the things being said about this particular gang mythologize it, make it seem more powerful, more dangerous than it is? Like, I understand you want to treat it seriously,
right,
but do you think some of it is overblown?
Well, I think when people conflate it with the situation at Nome and 16th, when people conflate it with that apartment building that we just discussed, when they conflate it with the mass gathering over on South Havana, yeah, that's an exaggeration. But I think that I think we have to err on the side of caution, because that this is a very dangerous gang. They've been known to give out orders, not here, not we're aware of here, but in other parts of the country to shoot law enforcement, to kill law enforcement, and so it's a very significant challenge to identify them within the Venezuelan community and to have the cooperation from the Venezuelan immigrant community. And so we're working hard to get that cooperation, and it's not going to be an easy task, but I'd rather be ahead of the problem than behind the problem.
Let's circle back then to some folks in the Venezuelan community who are living at that apartment complex that the city is shutting down, in which you described as an unprecedented action to close an entire apartment complex for unsafe conditions. Does the city have an obligation to help people find a new place to live? Is that just on the landlord? And if you have a landlord who's not going to help the people, what can the city do?
To me, there's a moral obligation upon the city, and so, we've been working, certainly with the landlord, with other nonprofits, with the state, in terms of trying to get these people housed. And we will commit some funds to house them temporarily. but in the long run, we don't have the resources to do that.
There are advocates that want people to get 2 months, be there before the building is cleared. They have 6 days. Is 2 months possible?
No.
Why?
It's not possible. Under our current ordinance, it's 15 days from the point of notice, and we've already given notice. And I just really, I mean, we've been working with this building and its owners for a very long time. I mean, they're out-of-state slumlords, and they haven't maintained the building. And I've personally gone to the building. I think last year I went to the building, and early last year, when called by residents and by some of the probably the very nonprofits that are fighting us on clearing the building, to go to look at the conditions, to hear from the residents about the conditions that they're living under. And granted that the rent was cheap, but it didn't meet the habitability requirements of our city.
Do you anticipate shutting down other complexes owned by the same out-of-state landlord?
Don't know yet at this time.
Okay. Mike Coffman, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.